There are moments in life that don't sit right with you. You can't explain them, you can't forget them, but you feel them deep in your bones. One such moment happened to me in the fall of 2019 when I stopped at a truck stop in West Memphis, Arkansas. I've been driving trucks for over 15 years, but what I saw that night still haunts me, and I'll never be able to shake that feeling. I had just finished hauling a load of produce from Dallas to Nashville. I was running late, as always, trying to make up some time on the road. It had been a long, grueling stretch of driving, and I needed a break. As night fell, I found myself on Interstate 40, passing through West Memphis. I decided to stop at a truck stop I was familiar with, a Flying J just off the highway, near an old run-down diner called Roy's. It wasn't my first time there, but something about that place always felt a little off. Maybe it was the long stretches of empty roads that led up to it, or the quiet that seemed to cling to the air around the diner and parking lot. I parked my rig in the half-empty lot, feeling the weight of the long hours on my shoulders. My dog Noodles, who had been my co-pilot for years, sat up in the passenger seat, sniffing the air. Normally, he would curl up and sleep the moment I pulled into a stop, but tonight was different. He wasn't settling down. Instead, he sat there, wide-eyed and alert, his ears perked up like he could hear something I couldn't. I should have paid attention to that. I should have taken it as a warning, but I didn't. The lot wasn't crowded. There were a few rigs parked along the far side, engines idling, but the place felt oddly quiet. There was no chatter from the drivers, no rumble of truck engines starting up, no music from a nearby cab. It was just the low hum of the streetlights buzzing overhead. I stepped out of the truck and locked the door behind me, giving Noodles a reassuring pat on the head. His eyes followed me as I walked toward the diner, but he didn't look happy about it. I could feel his gaze on me, but I shrugged it off. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and greasy food the moment I stepped inside. It wasn't a bad smell, but it wasn't inviting either. The place was nearly empty. Behind the counter, a tired-looking waitress stood, scribbling something down on a notepad. In the corner, an older man hunched over a plate of something unappetizing, but he didn't look up when I entered. I sat down in a booth by the window, ordered the usual, eggs, bacon, toast, and settled in. The waitress barely looked up when she took my order, and the diner was silent except for the low hum of an old radio playing a country song from the 80s. It wasn't until I got up to use the restroom that things took a turn. I was gone for maybe 2 minutes. When I came back, everything looked the same, except for one small detail. My fork had moved. It wasn't by much, just a few inches to the left, but it was enough to make me pause. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Maybe the waitress had come by and adjusted something, but the plate was untouched, and I hadn't heard anyone near my table. A cold feeling crept up my spine. I scanned the diner again, but nothing seemed out of place. The older man was still there, staring down at his plate. The waitress was still behind the counter, jotting something down. No one had been near my table. I shrugged it off as a figment of my imagination, but the feeling of unease lingered. I quickly finished my meal, not wanting to be there any longer than necessary. The whole time, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't just the fork. There was something about the place that didn't sit right with me. The silence, the emptiness, and that nagging sensation that I was being watched. After I paid my bill and left the diner, I walked back to my truck. Noodles was pacing in the cab, whining softly, and I muttered to him to relax. As I climbed into the truck, I glanced out toward the edge of the trees just beyond the gas station, and that's when I saw him. A figure standing just at the tree line. The figure was too far to make out any details, but it was clear that he wasn't moving like a normal person would. He was standing perfectly still, staring at me. I froze, my hand still on the door handle. I don't know how long I sat there, just staring at him, but I could feel the hair on the back of my neck standing up. He didn't move. He just stood there, watching me. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Was he just some random guy stretching his legs, maybe a homeless person looking for food or shelter? But no, it felt wrong. There was something about the way he stood there, unmoving, like he wasn't just standing there by chance. Then, without warning, he shifted, not toward me, not away, just a slow, unnatural movement like he wanted me to know that he saw me too. The air inside the cab felt suffocating. Noodles growled low in his throat, his fur bristling. I quickly locked the doors, my eyes never leaving the figure. He stayed there for a few more seconds, then, without a sound, disappeared into the woods. Not walked, not ran, just vanished. 1 second he was there, the next he was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My mind raced with what I had just seen. Was it real? Had I imagined it? But I knew it wasn't just my imagination. Something had happened, something I couldn't explain. The next morning, I debated whether to report it to someone, but what would I even say? Hey, I saw a guy standing in the woods last night staring at me. It sounded crazy, so I kept it to myself. Instead, I went into the Flying J to grab a coffee before hitting the road. The cashier, an older guy with deep lines on his face, seemed friendly enough, so I asked him if he'd ever seen anything strange around the truck stop. He sighed, rubbed his chin, and said, "Yeah, now and then. Solo truckers, mostly. They say they see someone lurking around, messing with their trucks. Police never find them." I froze. "Messing with their trucks?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "Yeah," he said, "and I've heard a few stories of things being tampered with. Some truckers say they find their food messed with too." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. My fork. I hadn't noticed anything weird about my meal. I felt fine, but the idea that someone had been at my table, touching my food while I was gone, made my skin crawl. I didn't stick around much longer. I thanked the cashier and walked back to my truck, my heart pounding in my chest. Noodles was still on edge, staring out into the woods. I climbed into the cab, fired up the engine, and left West Memphis without looking back. I haven't stopped there since. But that wasn't the end of the strange occurrences. A few months later, I was on Highway 93, driving through the desert from Phoenix to Henderson, Nevada. It was late, probably around 1 a.m., and the road was completely empty. I had the whole stretch of highway to myself, listening to late-night talk radio to stay awake. The only other thing on the road was my truck. Then, out of nowhere, a car appeared behind me, speeding up fast. It was a silver sedan, maybe a Honda or a Toyota, and it was moving like it was in a hurry. I remember thinking the driver was either drunk or desperate to get somewhere. The car swerved a bit as it approached, then settled into the left lane to pass me. That's when I saw her, the woman in the passenger seat. Her face was pale, almost ghostly, under the glow of the dashboard lights. Her eyes were wide open, unblinking, locked onto mine. She was staring directly at me as if trying to communicate something. Her mouth was slightly open, like she wanted to say something, but no sound came out. My gaze flicked to the driver's side, but all I saw was a dark silhouette, just a shadow gripping the steering wheel. I was about to look back at the road when the car sped up and pulled ahead, disappearing into the darkness ahead of me. I tried to convince myself it was just some tired passenger, maybe messing around, but there was something about the woman's face, something in her eyes that didn't sit right with me. She wasn't just tired or playing a prank, she was terrified. I couldn't shake that feeling. 20 minutes passed and the road was still empty. Then, just as I thought it was all over, the headlights appeared in my rearview mirror again. The same silver sedan. It blew past me once more, just as before, but this time the woman's face was different, still frozen in fear, but now her mouth was open wider, like she was screaming without a sound. And then, just like before, the car sped off into the darkness, vanishing without a trace. At this point, I was fully awake, my heart racing. There was no way I had just imagined that. I slowed down slightly, scanning the road ahead for any sign of the car. Nothing. No car, no headlights, just the vast emptiness of the desert. I thought maybe it was all over, but I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting the car to appear again. Another 20 minutes passed and still nothing. But then, just as I started to convince myself I was overreacting, the headlights appeared again. This time the car didn't speed past. It stayed behind me, just far enough that I could barely make out its shape. I couldn't take it anymore. My hands gripped the steering wheel, and I reached for my phone. I called 911, my voice shaking as I told them what had been happening. "There's a car behind me," I said. "It's a silver sedan, the same woman in the passenger seat, and it keeps following me." The dispatcher was calm, asking for my location and other details, and then told me to keep driving toward the next town. I gave her the information and hung up, glancing in the mirrors again. The car was gone, just gone. No slow down, no pulling off to the side, just vanished. When I reached Kingman, I pulled into a gas station to take a breather. I called dispatch to let them know I was taking a short break. As I was paying for my coffee, I asked the cashier if he had seen a silver sedan pass through recently. He thought for a second before shaking his head. Not in the last couple of hours, man, he said. I nodded, paid, and got back in my truck, but something still felt wrong. I finished my route and made it to Henderson just fine, but the whole way there, I felt like I wasn't alone, like someone was watching me from the shadows. I checked the news the next morning, hoping to find a report about a missing woman or an accident, but there was nothing. Maybe it was just exhaustion. Maybe it was some strange coincidence. But part of me, a big part of me, thinks that woman was trying to tell me something. And whatever it was, I didn't stick around to find out.